Layla, please take it away and go ahead and get started in today's morning meeting.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lila Jamal, co-chair of this committee, and I'm officially calling the meeting to order. I want to thank you all for joining us today for our second at-large meeting of the Sustainability and Resilience Committee. As a reminder, this meeting will be broadcast today by Orange TV, so please mute your phone if you're not speaking today. Byron, would you please give a roll call?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just want to start off by saying, forgive me first if I butcher your name, and secondly, to expedite the roll calls, I'll be calling everyone by their first name, except for those who have similar names, okay? So, if we're ready, first of all, Adele, Lobby. And by the way, please use this to check your communication, your focus. Okay, we move on. Alex. Alex Bashir. Okay. Ashia. Macmillan. Okay, we got you. Bill.
Good morning.
All right. CT. Yes.
Good morning, CT.
Carlos. Carlos is not here. Derek. Derek is not here. Ivan. Okay. John.
There's Adele.
There.
Adele, good morning. Can you test your audio?
Can you hear me?
Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, thank you. John Martinez. Kenneth.
Good morning, it's Ken Peach. Welcome, I'm here.
Okay. Christy. That's Christy Wolf. Here. Louis.
Louis is here.
Thank you. Monday. Melvin, of course. Thank you. Mohammed.
Good morning, I'm present.
Thank you. Monica.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Where? Michelle.
Is it Rachel? Rachel Allen? I'm here.
Yes.
Good morning.
Thank you. Raquel.
Good morning, everyone. This is Raquel Fernandez.
Rasha.
Risham. He's there.
Okay, Sarah. Okay. Sam Shea.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Sam. Graham.
Good morning. I'm here.
Okay, good morning. Susan? You here? Yes, she is. Theo? Burris? Sarah? Yeah, she's here.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning. Chris? Or Chris Castro? David Dunn?
I'm here. Good morning.
Jim? This is Jim. Marcus? Jim Marcus? Yeah. Yeah. Judy Dunn?
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Good morning. Christopher?
Chris Stanger is here. Good morning.
Thank you. And Nicole?
Good morning, Nicole from Apopka is here.
Okay, thank you. And of course, we have Layla, Jeff, myself, and Laura.
Good morning.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Byron. And also just to announce a few staff that have also joined us today, staff from Orange TV. We've got Amy Trivon, Lori Forsman, Jeff Benavidez, Elise Coos, and I think I captured, and Sean Edu and Jim Ward and Jennifer Cummings. That's everyone on here. With that, we can go ahead and get started.
This is Alex Pricer. I'm here too.
Oh, Alex, great, thank you. Also, Chris Castro and Christy Walson just joined the line for the attendance record.
Good morning, everyone.
Jennifer Rupert is also here.
Oh, Jennifer, thank you.
Theo Webster's here.
Theo, good morning.
And Ivan Aaron is also here.
Hi, Ivan. Morning.
Just started later. All right, Ivan. Carlos Torrealba is also here. See you. Derek, great, thank you.
Anybody else missing?
Jeff, John Slott is with you as well.
John Slott, good morning.
Morning.
All right, we'll go ahead and kick off the agenda. Thank you for the roll call and audio test for everybody. As a reminder, please keep your lines on mute if you're not speaking, just to mitigate the noise. Layla, could you address the public comment?
Yes, we'd like to see if there is any public comment.
We did not receive any virtual public comment at this time. Anyone that is watching or seeing and wishes to submit a public comment can do so by contacting me directly or checking the county calendar website for the instructions to submit the public comment via email.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'll take it from here, Lila. The purpose of today's meeting, we've got quite a bit to go through as far as the agenda. We just pull up the agenda here. We're going to review a recap of the subcommittees from last week. We'll also review at the same time some of the performance data and reporting metrics that we're going to be tracking that are in development. And then we're going to be doing a community activity for some strategic action items, as well as then we'll go through, Byron and Layla will close out the meeting by providing some next steps for the subcommittee round twos that are starting next week. Let's go ahead and keep moving. As far as recap from next week, we had, just to recap everybody, we had 6 meetings last week, 1 per day and 2 on Friday, and all focus groups based on the different focus group areas that we've identified. We had staff leads at most of the meetings, and we had quite a bit of good attendance across the board with all of our meetings throughout, not just for the assigned committee members. We had a variety of committee members join us from all different subcommittees. So thank you for your participation last week. Overall, just some general recommendations that we all felt as far as main takeaways from the initiative so far. It's important for us to, while we have this internal focus on this action plan, that we make those community connections with our communication, as well as we complete this plan, this step of the phase one for this plan. So that was the biggest recommendation, and we'll be doing an activity here today that touches on some of the items that were not discussed, that are obviously things that we are addressing in other departments and with other strategic initiatives across the county. As you all saw last week, this action plan is very focused on most of our operations and facility assets. So with that, we have made those intentional community connections in the specific areas that align. We also realize that one of the general recommendations is that we create an action plan that works for everybody, not just for employees, not just for the community, but also for our leadership and elected officials. So that is sustaining the sustainability plan. Also, one of the key points is guiding principles for our staff and to provide training for our staff so that they can really operationalize and understand how each of these goals that we're looking at right now and how they apply directly to them in their everyday jobs. Also, a key point is to narrow down the key global commitments that Orange County can sign on to as part of this effort. I'm going to be going through a recap of each of the takeaways, just the main takeaways that we've already made changes to. And it'll provide you a brief summary of what was discussed at those focus groups. I will also say that there are meeting notes, agendas, and the presentations that are posted on the Box account that are available for everybody to view, as well as the recordings from the sessions that were taken. Following today's meeting, I'll also be posting a summary sheet for each focus group, and the takeaways right here on the slide deck is only just a summary of those takeaways. For the buildings and infrastructure section, we have 3 goals that we've decided on as a team and have reviewed it. So we will be continuing to push these forward. And as far as recommendations, we have a goal that's specifically focused on all of our county buildings and infrastructure by 2030, as far as high performance and green building standards throughout. Reducing building and infrastructure energy consumption by 20% by 2025. That's of course adjusted with growth and population, as well as the square footage growth and facility growth that we will undertake as a county. Goal number 3 is achieve adequate continuity of critical asset services by 2026. That's really attacking some of the resilience conversations that we've had, infrastructure, resilience, as well as critical facilities resilience from a facility hardening perspective. This goal will also position us with having a strategic approach to critical facility hardening, will position us for the variety of opportunities that are coming down from FEMA, as well as the state of Florida, and in terms of grants and funding for those infrastructures. The committee submitted some good recommendations with regards to at least requiring our projects to follow the principles for sustainable federal building guidelines as a minimum guideline that we can use, among looking at LEED, WELL, and Green Globes certification where applicable, as well as Envision standard as a guideline. So at least as part of our contracting requirements and some of the items that we'll be looking to recommend to the board will be to adopt this requirement for all of our buildings and infrastructure at a minimum. Also, we discussed design checklists to be created, that considerations, special considerations to be made depending on the types of facilities that we're building, for opportunities for food access, urban agriculture in certain situations, whether it's a community center or some type of community-facing entity, as well as the ability for expanding natural site features and access to nature on those site developments. And then, of course, focusing on occupant wellness, and particularly COVID-19 and prevention and any type of mitigation strategies that we can have to enhance health and safety overall in our public facilities. Also, we're going to be looking into developing a comprehensive 5-year buildings and infrastructure resilience plan. Several of our departments already have 5-year capital improvement plans that have this in their scope, but we'd be looking to expanding that overall across the all departments, or all applicable departments, I should say. Okay, with that, I'm going to share some of the performance data that we are going to be using to kind of measure our successes or our progress towards the goals that I just mentioned with some graphs here. And with that, I'll kick it over to Lori Forsman to make that presentation.
Good morning, everyone. So what you're seeing on the screen is sort of a summary goal chart based on the goals that Jeff just went over, and some of the metrics that we'll be capturing that align with those goals. Some of this data is still to be resolved and or to be determined. The first goal will be tracking, the activities related to our buildings, how many we have certified, how many we plan to certify, or at least meet minimum green building standards that we set. The second goal will be tracking our energy consumption across our buildings and facilities. And in the third goal, we'll be looking at how we assess some of those buildings for critical assets and services. On the next slide, I'm just showing a few details about the buildings we'll be capturing. We are planning to put our buildings and structures into Energy Cap, and we'll be keeping track of that as we go and enter more of our building stock and facilities. How many buildings we rank via Energy Star Portfolio Manager and rank with a score of 50 or more. We'll be looking at human experience scores based on that wellness criteria that Jeff described. And then lastly, looking at the vulnerability and resilience in those buildings based upon critical assets and services. Some of these are TBD because they're new metrics that we have not captured before. On the next slide, I'm just quickly showing the electricity baseline as it's captured today for 2019. Some of that data is being refined a little, but you can see the bulk of the electricity usage at the convention center and within our utilities, providing that water and wastewater infrastructure. On the next slide, the total electricity consumptions captured. Will also be looking at infrastructure energy use, as well as what I just mentioned, the electricity use of water, wastewater infrastructure for energy use as well. And then on the next slide is, we will also be looking at our energy baseline and looking at our renewable offsets and opportunities to affect some of the goals in our climate action section. So that is it for the metrics in this buildings and infrastructure summary.
Any questions on the buildings and infrastructure summary for now? Let's see, Ken Peach in the chat. Let me get to the chat, sorry about that. Would it make sense to replace the focus on COVID-19 wellness with infectious diseases? Yes, absolutely. So I tagged it down there just because that's something that is real time. And in fact, the buildings and architecture industry are providing specific guidance and technical guidance as far as designing of new facilities. So we'll be using that for infectious disease and control and overall health and safety. So it's really good feedback just to label it a little differently, not specifically for COVID-19.
Jeff, I have one comment. We had a lot of discussion in our focus group, not only in developing the goals and objectives that could be related now, but to make sure we had something sustainable that can go across different administrations. That if a new administration didn't come in and want to change things or throw things out, something that could be sustainable across, for everyone. Is that incorporated into what we just talked about?
So Sam, as part of goal number 1, what we're proposing as staff is just an overhaul on our internal design criteria and an owner's project requirements of sorts. So the county currently doesn't have a comprehensive owner's project requirements. It's divided out by different departments depending on what we're building. So our goal would be there's an action item in the section that says an alignment of all of the design criteria as well as the planning guidelines that we have out there with some of these similar goals that it's just operationalized in those documents. So this way there's some redundancy across the organization.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Jeff, in the subgroups, Mr. John Slott, just a question around long-term impacts of remote work in administrative buildings and other. Is there as a part of this goal or in the reduction, is there a potential to reduce, if not consolidate county functions and reduce square footage under management overall, just because those people are not in the workplace, they're working remotely?
Yeah, John, good point. It's something that we have been in discussion with. We actually have potentially a strategy to do a full real estate analysis, and it's something that has been discussed in the past. I'll have to get back to you as far as what the status is of that analysis, but really just to right size what our needs are, to your point, especially moving forward. I believe that project was started last year, and I'm actually glad that it wasn't completed given what we're in right now. So it'll allow us the opportunity to make those considerations as we continue to grow.
Hey, Jeff, I would just add one more thing, and it's sort of greenhouse gas related and sort of not, which is parking. So I know at the Tampa airport, when they did big renovations there, they ended up with Uber and Lyft coming on, not needing as much parking, right? And so to think about ways to facilitate, bikers and other sorts of transportation. So you might think about that as you're assessing your building, like what are your parking needs for future buildings or existing, and then how could they be used more productively if they're not being used as much, either because people are working from home or people are doing, Uber, Lyft.
That's actually, for everyone's benefit, that's actually a community strategy that we're working towards right now. Not necessarily as part of this plan, but it's just an ongoing effort from our public works team where we're having substantial revisions to our parking code. We actually just did a presentation at last week's Board of County Commissioners meeting that went really well. So we'll continuously move that, some of those revisions forward.
Jeff, I have one more thing if possible.
Yes, sir.
One thing we talked about in this particular subcommittee was the importance of an energy manager within the facilities department at the county, how influential and how imperative it was for us at the city to have to hire on a full-time energy manager so that we can do ongoing tracking, monitoring, and eventually a lot of the retrofits and renewable projects that we're looking to do in the county. I know that that's not probably something that we add as a goal, but certainly, hopefully we can prioritize it as a core strategy in this area.
Yeah, Chris, it's actually part of goal number 2. There's a set of actions, and that's one of the first 2 actions, at least to create a team of people at this moment that can have that particular focus. We have a very small handful of individuals that are dedicated to that right now, but it's not their sole design of their position. It would be our goal, at least in the interim, to have a team that is coordinating these projects across the county to get together.
That'll be a game changer. The amount of money you guys will start to save because now you're optimizing the performance and you're looking at it more in real time is staggering. I mean, we're saving about $2 million a year compared to our baseline after we got our energy manager. So something to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Any other comments on this section before we move on to water? Okay, great. In addition to Jennifer Rupert, leveraging the power of purchasing across county departments should be a consideration. So regarding purchasing of electric power or just in general, that the general comment is actually one of the strategies on the supply chain subcommittee that we've kind of identified as an action item, is to just look for those purchasing opportunities across the county in general. So that's definitely a huge area for opportunity there. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, on the water section, very productive conversation there. I think we got everything we needed in that section. Here are some of the finalized goals that we've arrived at for that section based on everybody's feedback. So goal number 1 would be protecting water quality through conducting a series of facility assessments by 2022. Of course, once that goal is achieved, we would create a new goal at that time around water quality and protecting and further protection of surface water body quality and stormwater quality at that point. So again, the goal number 1 is very short term, and we'll hope to do that. We're on target to do that in that time frame. The other item was increase water efficiency across our facilities by 20%. The committee recommended we break this out into 2 different metrics. One is just straight conservation, plumbing fixtures and the like. And then the number 2 goal is more using the efficiency at our water plants as far as how much water we use that is non-revenue generating or that is just being used in process and operation. So those 2 key drivers there to drive that goal forward. Also, develop a clean and alternate water supply to meet future demand by 2030. These are ongoing projects that we will continue to pursue regional opportunities, especially as water becomes more and more scarce and regulations become ever changing at the state level with regards to the Clean Water Act that is in development. So really kind of bucketing all of our activities around conservation and enhancement of water quality, while also addressing water supply for drinking water and potable processed water. Let's see the other here. At this time, I'll also kick it to Lori to just provide some general overview of how we're going to be tracking the progress in this section.
So in our water use and quality baseline, we have the goals to the left, looking at water quality. One of the main metrics we have is a water atlas dashboard that follows some trends for the water bodies in terms of criteria collected. The second goal is the water efficiency across all facilities, and the main goal is the gallons of water used. And then the third one is the alternate water supply goal, which is looking at the water supplied to our Orange County Utilities customers. In the next slide.
Just wanted to add in a quick shout out. During our water focus group meeting for the benefit of the committee, we presented the Water Atlas, which is kind of an unknown tool out there that we'd like to encourage everyone to use. If you Google Orange County Water Atlas, it's a really nice dashboard that you can see all of our water bodies in the county and what the levels of nutrient are and nutrient loading at any given time. So that's a program we continue to maintain and hope to enhance in the action plan.
So on the next slide,
hold on one second, just some feedback for everybody. Can Peach increase water use efficiency, or is that already clear by the term water efficiency? Yes, good feedback there. And then there was a consideration on doing, yes, the non-potable versus potable. So those will be broken out in that second goal, potable versus reclaimed water. The equity topics that came up as far as process is something that we just need to fix in our procedure with response. And that was an item that we discussed at the committee meeting this week internally, just from a process and response from an equity standpoint. So Ray, I can follow up with some specifics that we did talk through at that meeting, but really using this clean water supply as overarching goal for our comprehensive planning and our capital planning efforts would be the area that we've kind of added that key driving strategy for.
So this next slide just goes into more detail about some of the metrics for the water quality baseline. As mentioned, the Water Atlas dashboard and the information captured, and sort of an easy way for the public to look at that information from a green, yellow, and red standpoint. We'll be looking at our MS4 permit compliance, our stormwater maintenance activities in terms of tracking the inventory of our assets, and then the scheduled maintenance. We'll be looking at miles of street sweeping performed to help with basin impairments, and then we'll look at the actual CIP projects for nutrient and pollution reduction. And then lastly, we'll ensure that we capture the number of septic tanks on county properties. As the third goal, I believe it is, looks at those transition from septic to sewer. The next slide shows how we're capturing our water use baseline among the different departments. This is not a complete measure yet. We're still working on capturing the baseline and clarifying some of the numbers for some of our facilities. And then the next slide shows that we're also tracking wastewater coming from our county properties. Once again, refining that baseline, and then wastewater processed from our Orange County utility customers. The next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, did you go? Okay. And then we're also looking at the amount of water supplied to Orange County utility customers, and then we'll be separating out the gallons of reclaimed water supplied to customers as well. And then I believe that's the last slide. We will be tracking water reuse at our facilities once we begin that process. And then the tracking of the TSI index is actually not an index that is considered an industry standard any longer. So that's why we are looking at capturing some different information about our water bodies and nutrients. And
so specifically on the community water quality and the surface water bodies, we currently track these nutrients that are part of that TSI, the index that the national standard has been updated since using that TSI. So we really track it at the nutrient load level, specifically for all 4 of these items: E. coli, phosphorus, nitrogen, chlorophyll, and Secchi-Dep. So we also provide a green, yellow, and red scorecard on that water atlas. So I encourage everyone to take a look at it. If I get a break while talking, I'll drop the link on here for everyone to check it out. I did capture some of the feedback in the chat, so thank you. We'll do that. Susan, I'd be curious to see what you specifically mean on the state standards, but maybe we can talk through offline on that. And
yeah, well, or later. You know, Mayor Demings, as you well know, is the vice chair of the Urban Caucus for FAC, and they're, I believe, going to be entertaining a policy proposal. I was very unaware at the amazing amount of carbon savings and water savings from appliance standards. So this is, and in a time of COVID and hand washing, it's ever more important. Water faucets, it's toilets, and it is billions of gallons and billions of water savings. So one thing, and Jennifer Rupert, this kind of relates to you as well, that some of the compacts and some of the resilience offices are also weighing in, like at the state level, because there's some things you can't do at the county. So this is like a thing, there is no extra cost to people, whether you buy an efficient shower head or not. So there's no incremental cost, and the savings for water is enormous, and then the carbon, because you're not heating up as much water. So I'm just wondering at some point, whether it's the East Central Florida Collaborative or this committee would help encourage the state through FAC, because Mayor Demings obviously already has a leadership position there. So anyway, I'm going to send you all that, but it's just something that I myself was really unaware of. ACEEE, Chris has a appliance standards sort of project, and so they brought this to my attention. So I'm going to be moving that with some advocates, but I would love support from this committee and the mayor, of course.
Thank you, Susan, for clarification on that. And I was actually going to piggyback on that while saying that as a regional collaborative, as part of the East Central Florida Planning Council, I think that's something that we just need to look at from a regional standpoint, because it's not just Orange County that is a player, or Orange County Utilities. It's OUC, Toho, City of Apopka, Winter Park, all of our water utilities across the board. So it's something that the American Water Resources Association, as well as all of the other trade organizations, really need to just collaborate further on the blue infrastructure, and almost a regional water resilience plan would be wonderful. Let's see, I was trying to pull up as the chat was going, and I can't find what I was trying to pull up with regards to Rachel's comment in regards to water equity. Here we go. So we recently, I think one of the things that what we can do is, we recently did a smart irrigation proclamation, and although we're not making a big deal of proclamations lately, just because of the virtual environment, and we're not doing that, unfortunately. We had done a proclamation to celebrate Water Efficiency Month, and particularly Smart Irrigation Month in July. And at the beginning of that proclamation was a key statement that Mayor Demings signed, was Orange County recognizes water as a finite resource that is vital to human life. And it goes on to a variety of different essential items for water. So that, I will share that proclamation with everybody, because our goal in this section was to recreate some of that language that was there. Of course, that language was intentionally for the Water Conservation Month for July, but that's something that we would be putting forth as a recommendation, as just a overarching water efficiency and water conservation throughout this section. So I'll send that out for everybody to review and provide feedback as we develop the narratives in this section. Any other points or questions on this? Yes, sir, Melvin.
It's certainly written subdivisions, and I assume we need to make sure we have a tie-in between, we talk about what increase our tree canopy, of course, which is very good, and of course, that applies to all of Orange County, and particularly I'm thinking something. But I know, like in my subdivision, the street sweepers come kind of irregular and not too often. And a lot of those leaves wind up really going to the train, down to the lake that's near our subdivision. That's a kind of a comment that we didn't make sure we tie those two components together, to make sure that if somebody tweeting retweeting, I think we need to look at that closely,
Melvin, thank you for your comments. For everybody's benefit, I don't know if you were able to hear that, just because we'll have the phone in another dimension here. But in general, Melvin was talking about regarding the coordination of our street sweeping operations and practices throughout county roads as well as neighborhoods. and just the coordination from a water quality standpoint, and when with regards to tree canopy and preservation of space. So that's actually part of the stormwater infrastructure plan that we're going to be embarking on for next year. That's an action item that is already in the plan and proposed in the budget for next year for fiscal year 21. So that's, we would be continuously looking for efficiencies there. And Melvin, I'll be happy to follow up with you particularly on your neighborhood feedback so that we can address it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the water section? All right, great. So for the supply chain and materials management section, go ahead and make this a little bigger. We had a really good discussion on supply chain, as well as our landfill operations and solid waste in general. We've narrowed this down into 4 goals that we can go ahead and work to achieve. Is for having contracting report on supplier sustainability metrics. That'll be achieved by doing a variety of supplier surveys internally, as well as for new RFPs that we'll be doing that, as well as creating an overarching almost county initiative as part of the RFPs that state how the county wants to prioritize, as well as asking suppliers to provide any feedback or best practices that they're following so that we can report that out and report it internally. We'll also be looking at a paperless initiative for our departments. That'll be a phased approach over the course of the next few years. And we'll be looking to, which will also help our waste diversion rates. And while we're just talking trash and recycling, it's also food. It's also a variety of specialty items such as scrap metal, tires, fuel, light bulbs, you name it. Really just a comprehensive look at our waste stream so that we have a consistency over how we dispose of that waste stream and look for those opportunities for savings and streamlining across different vendors and departments. Also be goal number 4, decreasing the per customer landfill disposal tonnage by 15%. By having this as a goal, there was a key recommendation from this team to, well, why don't we just make the development of a MRF the goal, that's a material recovery facility for recycling purposes. We decided that if we just hit that as a goal, and what we've done is made that as an action item under goal number 4. So goal number 4 is really just looking at the waste disposal tonnage in general. And then of course, enhancing our recycling system will help us get to that recycling tonnage driver. Also, as part of that recycling tonnage driver in goal number 4, we talked at length at this meeting with regards to exploring a rate study and looking at how a decentralized waste stream with looking for different partners in the community and private partners as well to actually recover some of these materials that are more specialty items that we don't have the ability to process here at our landfill. So those some really good discussions that we had here for that. Chris, just is there a specific reason that goal number 1 has a different target date? So we actually pushed that up a little bit. Are you saying just in terms of the 2025 number or 2027?
Yeah, I mean, that one seems pretty low-hanging fruit to ensure contracts are just reporting information. And so I just thought it seemed, you know, a little bit further out from some of the other goals. And I didn't know if that was because existing contracts are going to sunset at a certain point and then you can incorporate that, or if you really feel it's going to take 7 years to get the contracts that you currently have to report the proper metrics. I was just trying to get clarity on it.
Good feedback. I'll take that back to the team and see if we can clarify that date as well as potentially expedite that date. But you make a good point as part of that discussion we had was the complexities with the contracting process. Usually we have 3-year contracts, 1-year contracts, or even in some cases 5-year contracts. So really allowing for that sort of buffer so that we can have the ability to, phase that in and not affect the award or contracting schedule that we have.
Well, if they're 5-year contracts and we contracted it this year, then by 2025, those will be up. So maybe it is just aligning back to 2025 so that the waste goal targets are all on the same year and we're not trying to track different goals for different years. I think it could get complex on your end as you're trying to just monitor progress.
Yeah, good point. We'll take it back. Thank you. Okay, just a quick recap. We also had some really good discussion. Oh, sorry about that. There's some crashing down here at the bottom. Fix this so everyone can see it. There we go. So we talked about local supplier participation and having key action items as part of that. We have a current program that's going on right now, especially with our COVID-19 response that we have internally. So we'll be looking at as far as from a resilience focus and how that helps us just maintain continuity of services. We also have a massive MWBE disparity study that will be ongoing here at Orange County that will be not necessarily addressed as part of this plan, but it's an ongoing initiative. Once we have that study analysis done, we can include that for future years. I already mentioned the MRF item, and we talked at length in the scope of the Sustainable Materials Master Plan that is currently out to bid right now and will be ongoing process as far as planning the solid waste utility of the future. We're also already mentioned about the waste auditing of existing facilities and participating through a food waste diversion program through the city of Orlando. For those of you that are not aware, the food waste diversion programs here in Central Florida have been drastically impacted by the closing of Harvest Power earlier last month. So we are all working to find some different options. The convention center continues its program for food waste while we don't have that many food waste items coming out of the convention center at the moment. But we will continue looking at other options and particularly expanding out to other parts of the county, including corrections and some of the history center and some other facilities. All right. Go ahead and kick it over to Lori just to recap on how we're going to be tracking some of these items here.
So here is our supply chain materials management summary of the goals. The first goal, looking at those supplier sustainability metrics after doing the survey and tracking what we are seeing as reports from those from that survey. The second one is the paperless initiative. We did have some previous metrics on this, but with a change in our contract, we need to reestablish the metrics for 2020. For the third one, increase the waste diversion rates at our county facilities. We do track right now the estimated waste collected, and then we do have a 9% diversion rate at this point. And I'll go through some additional information on the next slide. And then the last goal is the per customer landfill disposal tonnage. We do have our per capita tonnage from the landfill, but we do need to refine this metric differently to capture just our per customer landfill data so that we can focus in on how our solid waste team works to decrease that disposal tonnage. On the next slide, the waste for our county operations baseline, we have our estimated tonnage, and we have a few more municipalities that do some collection for us that we need to capture some estimates from. And then we have our waste diverted at this point. And then the tons and costs of our recycling loads that are rejected. Since we do bear a cost, if we have a rejected load, we're very actively tracking how many bins or how many rejections we get, and we need to establish that for 2020. And then the percentage of our buildings that we have new trash recycling containers and associated signage that has gone out. And right now we have 240 bins deployed with some additional bins to be purchased. On the next slide, as our waste operations baseline is tracked by department, and as I said, that's being refined for a few properties that we need to collect some data on. And the next slide shows the additional metrics associated with landfill waste, the landfill disposal per customer, and then of course the diversion per customer. And then this is the last slide here, but I will note that we don't have food waste metrics right now. That will be something new we need to gather based upon some of those food waste diversion goals.
Yeah, we do actively track the food waste at the convention center, just for clarification, but across the other 6 or so facilities that we'd be looking to add to that program, we currently do not have baselines for them, but are actively in the process of creating those baselines. It actually brought up a lot of that baseline conversation when we were doing our single-use products internal policy, because we had to calculate the number of to-go items at the same time. So we've calculated kind of a meals per day per site. So we'll just have to match that up with our food waste baseline. And we'll be looking to the city of Orlando for 3 of those facilities at least, since those are all serviced by the city of Orlando at the moment. All right.
Jeff and Lori, it may be helpful, even if we don't have the baseline data completely, to incorporate it as a metric, knowing that we are going to move forward with it. So even if it's 0 as the baseline, it'll show progress as you start to divert food waste and actually show some momentum there. And so I would recommend that you all add the metric and then just add it to the actions like you all are mentioning, and that way you can actually show some significant progress.
Yeah, we definitely have some of those metrics already, Chris. It's just this new way of looking at it kind of helps drive processing efficiency on how we process that waste, because we get so much waste from outside the county as well, and some of the smaller entities. We track everything that comes through the doors there. It's just a matter of slicing it in a kind of a performance-driven fashion so that we can increase it. So thank you. Okay. Good feedback on that. Did you want to track composting rates from Madeline? So at this time, we don't have a composting facility for food waste. We do have the yard waste composting, and we do track those rates. So maybe that's just an item that we can add to that. That program has been put on hold due to COVID-19, but we still do yard waste clippings as well as the mulching operation that we have there.
Right. It's almost the same thing that Chris said. It's just a matter of tracking it and having it visually there, so you know at some point it's going to increase.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Dave. I just want to say we have a great degree of granularity that we can pull from the scale management system that answers a lot of these questions. We just need to ask the right questions.
Yep. Any other questions in this section? Comments? Okay, great. Moving on to the trees and land section. If you weren't there, you missed a good time. It was good discussion overall. I love trees. A lot of people love trees. So we're gonna be breaking this down into 3 key goals. We've actually tried to reorganize just based on your feedback on some of the goals that we had throughout. So we will continue with the first goal that was already been stated. We'll also be looking to achieve a 30% tree canopy across our county properties through protection and planting. And in that goal is very specific actions as far as prioritization on different properties. Once we actually have that baseline generated by the end of next month, we'll be able to itemize where we have deficiencies, as well as prioritize our different tree planting efforts based on some of the great discussions that we had that I'll show on this next slide here as far as a recap goes. And then the nature-based carbon reduction strategy would be in conjunction with this tree canopy that will also be a community-wide benefit, so that we can drive some of those tree planting efforts, as well as conservation and protection efforts back to tracking trees based on the value of carbon, as well as the value of stormwater, health, and wellness throughout. So all of those priorities are kind of detailed out as part of the action items in the report, or in the plan. So as I mentioned, we'll be setting some tree planting goals based on our existing budgets and existing funding that we already have programs for, and really streamlining all those programs that we have. As we talked about in that committee, we have a variety of different tree planting programs, not just for residents, but tree planting programs that we do internally. It's really just aligning all those to that master tree planting program and plan under one strategy. So that's our goal with that, as well as looking for land use and zoning coordination. We had a really good discussion there, is just how our land use and zoning departments kind of coordinate with each other as future development happens, so that we can increase the quality of life and connectedness of those different tree canopies or projects that we look for partnerships on externally with the municipalities, as well as neighboring counties and municipalities. We also have a key priority there for equitable community access to, as a checklist item, as part of our design criteria when we're developing new properties. We'll be looking for opportunities for using amenities that are on site, open to the public. So for example, if we're doing a community center, we have not just the ability to create a parking lot with a building, but also have some nature-based opportunities and amenities at those sites that open up to the community, of course. We also talked about piloting urban wildlife biodiversity initiative as part of our design guidelines for new construction and for renovations, and then looking at our existing parks and really just trying to align some of the biodiversity work that we already have that is ongoing on our conservation departments, but aligning those with our parks department and other lands departments that we manage and protect lands through. All right, and for that, we'll go to the performance data. To track, hope it's not just parks, it's parks within cities. Ray, can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, based on the meeting, talking more, it's great at parks, doing biodiversity and wildlife, but also within our cities, how do we bring in more wildlife or pollinators, you know, not just isolating in parks as natural places?
Yeah, so with that recommendation, we'll be looking at where that fits into the urban comp plan, specifically in those areas for just design guidelines that we can utilize. This is largely a community effort too. So it's something that we would be looking to make sure that we don't have any barriers or regulatory barriers with regards to enhancing some of those goals. But I just wanted to, we wanted to put that in there as for us, as well as for, it'll be a community strategy that we can talk through. All right, on the trees and lands section here, Chris, thank you for joining us. You have to drop off there.
I'm
sorry, Lori, go ahead.
Sorry. Here's the trees and land summary. I will say that there's been a lot of changing going on this week with the team working and redefining and defining goals. So the first goal about the securing our environmentally sensitive lands is stated, and our baseline at 23,000 acres. And then the achieving the 30% tree canopy over county-owned properties is something we still need to measure. And then the last goal has actually changed to that carbon-based nature goal, and we'll need to capture data for that goal specifically related to trees and species. On the next slide, just some summary of some of the land metrics that we have right now that will need to be redefined based on some of the changes in the goals. The preserved number of acres, acres that we manage for passive recreation right now, which includes our park acreage. And then looking at some of the conserved acres that are contiguous and support wildlife protection and habitat corridor protection. And then also looking at properties and how it affects our watershed basins and the properties protected. And in these two data points, it's not just Orange County owned properties, but properties that are conserved from the state perspective. So other partners that have properties. So looking at the contiguous lands as conservation as a whole.
And these two metrics also would be looking for coordination with the various municipalities and other agencies, like Lori mentioned, the South Florida Water Management and St. John's Water Management District. So that 27,000 that you see there, those are ours plus theirs. So it's others as well. So again, looking to coordinate, further planning and development to the point we were trying to make before, regional coordination amongst that across the county line.
How much acres do we
23.
Byron's at 23. Okay.
Byron's question was how many acres does the county currently have for preserved acres? That, just to clarify, those are preserved acres. We also have the additional 18,500 that are passive recreation, that are open recreation. We have not completed the inventory yet for all of the, kind of lands that we just have that are undeveloped, not really tagged for anything. They're just undeveloped lands, but that's part of our goal here for that baseline.
So in the trees baseline, we were looking at doing some capture of trees planted on county properties, including by species, and then the tree canopy coverage as a community metric, which we have some data on that, and there'll be new data collected. And then the last metric was getting at that carbon nature-based solutions, which is trees removed and saved on county properties. That's something that we'll have to look to for the future.
Just to address Alex's question in the chat regarding the 23,000 acres, and I know, Alex, you weren't able to join us last Thursday, but we did talk about the Green Place program in general at that meeting, and specifically the Green Place program has that 23,000 acres as essentially a doubling of our natural lands, which was one of the key points that Mayor Demings wanted to commit to before he took office, and has been continuously committed to achieving that goal. The 23,000 was arrived by, again, just doubling that acreage. And we've been trying to backtrack and engineer how we can arrive at that 23,000 over the last year. So that project is ongoing, and happy to catch you up to speed after that. I'd love to, specifically work with you offline, just because you did not, you weren't able to attend, but love your feedback on this section.
Okay,
obviously.
Great.
Okay, any questions on the metrics as well as the goals for the trees and land section?
Will there be like a priority list for which types of trees are planted in certain areas?
Yeah, so we are going to be following the right tree, right place, of course, but also adding a layer, and we talked about this at length in the committee with regards to the value that tree has from a carbon reduction standpoint, heat island reduction, water quality and stormwater management, and overall just aesthetic. So it's kind of going through a very, UCF has developed, and a few others have developed really nice design guidelines and planting standards that we can adopt, so that we can just use that as our best practices and our design guidelines as we plant, as well as preserve various trees.
Okay.
So happy to get your feedback on kind of, I can provide you some of the notes that we took in the follow-up since then.
That'd be great.
Any other questions on this section? Wondering if adding a column to address partnerships, departments from, yeah, so Jennifer, to your point, this is to operationalize these. These graphs are really just summaries. In the action plan, we have broken down each of these actions and goals with specific budget items, who's responsible, how we're gonna get there, and really just making it very easy for people to read so that we can give it to some staff person and just go ahead and have at it and have fun with this little project. So that's the intent that we're trying to make it really kind of like a working document for us all internally, so that we can just stay true to what we had discussed here. So that's any feedback in general for how to make that better. Once this becomes a visual document, these graphs are not the final. It's just, this is what we are presenting now. We have to go through a whole design process here in about a week and just kind of frame this out into an actual working document. Ken Peach, trees saved versus trees removed. Yes, those would be two separate baselines that our development review team, as well as our design teams, would be actively tracking, as far as, you know, those intentionally removed as part of a design or development. And then of course, the ones that were saved, those will be part of the tree inventory that would be performed at that time of development for a particular site. So thank you. Okay, any other questions on this section? Comments? All right, great. Let's see, moving on to mobility and fleet. Let's see. So mobility and fleet, the next two sections we still need to do some follow-up on, and Byron will go over that at the end of this session here. But as far as the mobility and fleet goals that we've kind of discussed already and have, you know, that we'll be proceeding forward with recommendations are to reduce our petroleum-based fuel usage by that 2030 date, as well as deploying electric vehicle charging infrastructure for public benefit, as well as for our own fleet charging benefit as well. So it'll be dual purpose there as far as a coordinated plan with CFX, FDOT, Lynx, the City of Orlando, City of Winter Park, City of Apopka, any city really. We're trying to look at this as a regional level, so that this way we can make sure that we have adequate facilities for charging throughout the county, not just concentrated in one urban area or in one particular area of the county, to allow equal access as well as equitable access throughout the different regions. That's going to be another key point for regional coordination as part of the East Central Florida Planning Council, and planning out those corridors as the state and local governments are aggressively pursuing. So again, this section is in progress still. And I say that in progress because while we've kind of solidified some of the fleet items on our end, as far as our fleet and mobility for our staff, we have added the potential, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on Friday, with regards to traffic engineering, safety, and coordination with the FDOT and FHWA resilience guides that have been put out with regards to infrastructure and technology deployment. So we'll go more into that on Friday. I just wanted to give everybody an overview as to what was discussed at the meeting for that. As far as performance data, again, this is in process. So I'll go ahead and share what we are coming up with so far, just to track progress.
So in our mobility and fleet summary right now, associated with those two goals, which goal number one, reducing our fuel usage. We do track the gallons of fuel, and we do track it by our different departments, as well as by vehicle types. So we do have that information captured. And for the second one, about deploying EVCI at county facilities, that includes county properties, and around the county, as Jeff pointed out in that goal, as that's changing a little bit. We currently do have a baseline for what's on county properties as well as what's available in the community. And then the next slide highlights just how we capture our gallons usage and on-road and off-road vehicles. And then this also takes into account the employee commute, which we did have a discussion about last week, and where to capture that. So we do track our employees and gallons of use for commuting, as well as vehicle miles traveled. And right now we've started tracking the number of employees teleworking. I imagine there'll be some changes in that in the future, but we do have that information. It especially is valuable in our greenhouse gas inventory to see the effects of employee community.
Also want to remind everybody, for those of you that did not attend that mobility meeting, we have some pretty significant efforts as far as coordination with the City of Orlando and the City of Winter Park that we're working on regional electrification with OUC, as well as Links that has been involved in that process as well. And we'd be looking to continuously moving that to other municipalities, as well as Duke Energy in the electrification initiatives across the state.
Metrics that we don't have captured here are metrics related to that mobility discussion. We do have some metrics in our community plan, and we'll refine those metrics as the discussion.
Jeff, if I may, please, since safety became one of the kind of the general objectives or the elements of the plan, do you want to set a goal that is related to safety, such as, Vision Zero or something that indicate or we can, kind of monitor progress, something related to pedestrian safety or to safety in general, whether for the fleet of the county or whether in general on county roads?
Dr. Ati, thank you for that comment, and we'll definitely be talking about it on Friday. We'll have several folks from, a variety of different divisions to talk through some of the options that we have for pedestrian safety, as well as an update on some of the initiatives that we already have undergoing that are part of the metro planning process, as well as our traffic technology and pedestrian safety initiatives that we have. So a lot of work that we're going on that, and we'll dive into the details on Friday. But I agree that a safety goal, whether it's for our fleet or our employees or the public, it's really one of the key things that we need to discuss further.
Great. That our goal 12 in the Our Home for Life community plan does focus on a safe transportation system and does track some of the metrics that you are speaking about. It's just a question of us looking at it from an internal perspective and maybe altering some of those goals for the community as well. So that will be part of the discussion.
Great, thank you.
I have a couple of things. I apologize, I wasn't at this session. Just things to consider. If you want to have a vehicle fuel efficiency tracking somehow, because again, you tracking use, but you do also want to track, older vehicles if you want to exchange those for more efficient vehicles, because some diesel vehicles you're probably still going to need for a while. Also with that, use of biodiesel, and maybe considering, converting some oil or like cooking oil to biodiesel. Those are some things that cities have done before. This is more of a question if hydrogen is in the mix. And also if you have considered either electrification or use of batteries for some off-road equipment or gardening tools. So kind of going more into the mobile area, but like smaller. I know it's not necessarily fleet, but it could be like some garden equipment that you use.
Good feedback, Madeline. To your first point on the fleet efficiency and fuel efficiency, we currently track a gallons per vehicle. So we track that every time someone fills up and checks in, it is tracked. And that's something that we'd be looking to assess as part of a fleet utilization and optimization study that we can do internally. And we've also left it open-ended as far as that goal. How we get there is still undetermined. It's really just the goal of reducing the fuel usage, and we can get that in a variety of ways, whether it is transition to CNG, biogas, biodiesel, electrification, propane, however we get there really We did not get into the detail for that. It's more just to get the goal so that we can go ahead and start executing and figuring out a transition plan immediately, immediately following, so that we're a little bit more mindful on the purchases that we make as well as the retrofits that we make for years coming forward. We'll talk through the, we honestly don't have too much landscaping equipment that we do ourselves as far as small equipment. That's definitely something that we can look through, and we've tried some initiatives in the past that have not been successful, but now with the vast variety of landscaping equipment that is available, we can look to do some pilot programs, and we'll add that as part of going back to that supplier survey. As we procure or seek out those contracts, we can definitely look for a variety of options there.
Hey, Jeff, just real quick, Marty Sullivan and Tom Weaver from Winter Park had reached out to me specifically about the idea of certifying landscaping equipment. So if you were going to do a pilot or of some sort, maybe you could hold hands with them, for obvious reasons, because they were very interested in it. And it is an amazing amount of exhaust that stuff, that it puts out. So anyway, just putting that on your radar.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I will likely be, they're doing a demonstration. I think it's next 2 weeks. I'll be there for sure. Any other questions in this section?
I was just going to point out quickly that we did have a goal before in our Home for Life to look at that the gas mowers versus electric mowers, and it was just sort of slowed down by technology, but it's a good point that you made to bring that goal back up and start working on that even from a community-wide perspective. Yeah, from a community-wide perspective, this is one of those areas where IFAS is a key partner in our community that would be the perfect candidate to really educate the community about electrification in small landscape equipment, and really to change that, overall throughout the community. That's really where we achieve some scale with regards to those small vehicle or small engine emissions. Any questions or other comments on this section? Again, the mobility and fleet section is in process, and we'll be diving in more into that on Friday. Okay, our last section here, just to provide a recap, we also just a time check, we'll keep the agenda going. This energy and climate section is as well under review and in process. We had a really good discussion overall, but one of the main recommendations was, instead of creating or specifically focusing around climate action as a section, really just a key resonating theme that the goals are achieved throughout, rather than just one section itself. We also discussed as far as disaster resilience planning, and some of those considerations and items were already integrated into the buildings and infrastructure section that we recategorized that goal. So we'll continue to keep these two goals in this section because they really don't live anywhere else. We want to make sure that we have these goals published and accounted for, not just in the energy and building section, but this is energy throughout, as well as the opportunity to track and commit to a certain percentage of renewable resources, as well as alternative energy resources, as a phase out process to that 2030 horizon. Okay, let's see, I'm sorry. Let me get the metrics as to how we're gonna go forth and perform. Here we go. This is a very data heavy area, but for those of you that are in the greenhouse gas and carbon accounting business, it is a lot of fun. So very quickly on this goal summary, looking at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, of course, we will be tracking them by sector, and I've captured what we have as a baseline right now for 2010. and we're working on our 2015 and subsequent year numbers. Important to note that as we go through looking at the emissions by sector, we'll also be aligning some of the goals, as Jeff mentioned, that are in the other focus areas so that they consistently support reducing emissions for that sector area. And the next slide.
Also wanted just to note here that a lot of these areas, we talked about this in the focus group specifically, but a lot of these areas are going to continuously grow. There's no way that we can control that growth as more people move here and so on, as far as landfill emissions, wastewater treatment plant emissions. All of those emissions are going to continuously grow. Our goal would be just to adapt and try to use that as a push for innovation and a way to mitigate those emissions, as well as track on a per capita growth and a square footage growth as far as we, as we continuously grow.
The next chart is just the pie slices of how those sectors look, percentage of the inventory baseline, and that's for 2010. And then the next slide shows our 2017 numbers. And the slide after that kind of shows a different visual bar graph of how those sector numbers break out for emissions. The next slide goes into sort of looking at the 2010, 2015, and 2017 numbers. Some of this data is a little bit in refinement right now. We had a little bit of an issue with some electricity data that we're working on. But as Jeff just mentioned, we're looking at how to better normalize, looking at these years, whether it's by per capita and the budget expenditures, maybe GDP and other things that can be used to kind of normalize the baseline instead of just looking at it as a percentage increase and or decrease. And then the last slide just indicates that we are looking at that energy baseline and the opportunities for offset. So we have captured the solar we currently have, and we'll capture as we expand those systems, and then we capture the landfill gas reutilization that's captured at our landfill right now and provided to AEC, creating energy. And the last item that we would add in there will be some of that wastewater biogas capture and the potential use for that.
Any questions or feedback on the energy and climate section?
Jeff, 2 slides ago, there was quite a change up in 2015 to 2017. Is that just an anomaly?
Let's see, this one right here.
Yeah, after decreasing by 9% from 10 to 15.
Right. Yeah, we have some issues with some of the electricity data in that section, and those numbers do have to be refined. But I do think that we'll see the same change in terms of decrease and increase, maybe not as wide of a gap.
Also to note here, just what has happened is the reporting protocol or the reporting methodology that was followed in years past, and I'm talking years. So the last time this was done was back in 2013, 2014 timeframe. But the reporting methodology then does not reflect what we're trying to get at, which is the international reporting methodology and protocol that is being used across various agencies, the private industry and public sector. So we are going to see some changes in the way things have been reported in the past. And we're active, as Lori said, we're actively trying to align those so that it is somewhat accurate to what it could have been and what it should be now.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir, Melvin.
I was looking at the opportunities for solar panel like farms, in the county properties. I know some at utilities, they have a lot of expensive county property. The opportunities that we are exploring for is solar farming or properties.
So for everyone's listening pleasure, Melvin was discussing about, are we looking at opportunities for solar and and increasing solar across the county? Absolutely. So as part of this would be putting together that action plan specifically for solar PV, of which one is happening right now. Well, there's several things happening right now, but one of the key things that we're looking at is a solar capacity study across the county in general. In this focus group committee meeting, I presented a pilot project that we're working on right now with Google, and that is going to be a county-wide inclusive of all municipalities within Orange County that can benefit from that study. And that'll be looking at not just rooftops, but also ground mount systems, and in the future, floating systems as well, just for opportunities and looking for those coordination there. On the community side, we've done a lot, and we'll be talking about that in the future on the buildings section next week, as far as enhancements to the community programs that we currently have. So good point, Melvin. And yes, it's stuff that is actively in process and in design with a variety of different projects. Any other questions or comments on the energy climate? Again, this section is not complete, so we will be diving into more of that on Friday.
Jeff, it's something like that's been in my head for a while, and maybe, you know, I'm just gonna throw it out there and you guys discuss it or think about it or not. Like how public health factors in here as well. I know, you know, climate is more environmental. Public health, it has other implications, but, you know, I keep thinking about fuel use, and it's not just greenhouse gases, also particulate matter, it's also other, you know, pollutants. So, and I just looked at the Green Book on EPA, and you guys don't have any non-attainment areas, which is good. But is there any benefit to tracking some of these pollutants that people are concerned about, and having those numbers out there so that people can see, you know, what the levels are versus, you know, what the NACs say, for example?
Good points, Madeline. So it's actually something that we've been talking through with our regional committee on the electrification and vehicle electrification initiative. And we actually have been tracking our air quality data over the course of the last, almost 15, 20 years now. It's as part of the regulatory environment that we have with EPA, but particularly we've been focused around the drastic cut in transportation and commuting over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have been not just with Google and Apple Maps, they have published that data citywide, really awesome charts. Well, awesome, but not awesome, but amazing to see the drastic reductions in commuting, and how that is an air quality benefit, to your point, is something that we'd be definitely tracking to do that, particularly on solar or energy generation, because we don't have much energy generation aside from solar and the landfill gas. We would be looking to OUC and Duke Energy to provide that air quality stack emission avoidance or mitigation. And that's something that OUC is actively working through on the integrated resource plan right now. And we actually have a pilot project that will hopefully roll out next year with the city of Orlando and UCF with regards to neighborhood level air quality monitoring. So I think some of those things is more just how we track the benefit, and really as we go through all these electrification and energy production programs, we're really just showing that benefit to public health and the increasing of the air quality here regionally. So good points there.
Just on that note, I think a lot of people and groups sort of struggle. How do you quantify this? Too often we put the whole public health kind of piece as this externality, and we don't, make, I don't know, people, the polluters pollute for free, and we all sort of pay for it. And I just think in this COVID era, where it's a respiratory virus, and if your air is more polluted, you're more likely to get sick, you're more likely to die. and the whole swath of equity issues and economic and racial disparities. So I think just thinking, and I would say this to Jennifer Rupert and then the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. I mean, it's a conversation that we're having over there. So Jeff, I think some of your teams and all of our thinking on this can impact our region and the state more generally. But we're foolish to not calculate, because the first thing people who don't want to transition to a low carbon economy are like, oh, it's going to cost something or more. It's not going to cost more. What are the costs? Goodness gracious, what's COVID costing us, or whatever. So I think we need to make sure that we figure out, and I don't even know the answer, but just get our best public health smart people, creating formulas or mechanisms for how you quantify this. What's the cost of asthma? What's all of those things. And if you're every time you take an internal combustion engine car off the road, you're helping people protect their public health. So anyway, I just think there should be, and I appreciate Madeline, you're raising it, and but I'm not sure we know exactly how to quantify it, but I think that's for our society, it's an essential thing that we must do.
Yeah, there's several conversations happening nationally in this regard, and a lot of communities have now created a social cost of carbon index to essentially track these emissions, and then figure out the health inequities and the health vulnerabilities as a result of that. Again, that social cost, not just air emissions, but cost of carbon throughout. So it's actually something that was discussed in the regional council. It's been active. Our biggest problem is just getting our hands on accurate and real-time data. So it is very difficult to do that and to try to quantify. But Lori and I have actually, and our team actually has been looking at Montgomery County in Maryland has an entire social cost of carbon budgeting guide as part of their county's budget process. So it's really interesting and really innovative, a way of approaching the budgeting process. But in general, it's something that we will definitely keep an eye out so that as those methodologies come more clear for us here regionally, we can kind of collaborate there.
Who might be interesting to pull in at some level would be Dale Brill, who's over at the Orlando Economic Partnership. He actually was the Secretary of Commerce, although they called it OTED back under Charlie Crist. So anyway, just he might be good because he does a lot of work with data, and you all have so many health institutions and hospitals in your area, and I think I think they play heavily in that economic partnership. So anyway, I should introduce you to Jennifer Rupert to get to meet Dale.
Yeah, absolutely. Raquel, just to address your comment here. So that was on the discussion item for this upcoming week on Friday. We talked briefly about carbon offset strategy, but we also just briefly talked about the localization of carbon offsetting and how we can create that local market as an idea. It's been pitched around several years now, and just figuring out as part of our community strategy what the county can do to kind of create that type of coordination across our different regions. Absolutely, currently the county does not carbon offset any of its facilities or carbon, so that mindful offsetting is a key strategy that we do not want to follow in some of the issues that have been arising with regards to there.
Jeff, one thought.
Yes,
sorry, getting a lot. One thought as well on the actual monitoring. It seems like the technology for monitoring columnar greenhouse gas effect and so on are starting to get cheaper, faster, better. Especially with some of the work out of NASA and some of the research institutes. It seems like we're using all of these analogous ways of measuring the impact of the environmental emissions in our communities, where we may be very close to the potential to actually measure actual number, an actual measurable scientific monitoring apparatus instead of all of these analogous. So I would see if there's a way to maybe build in some of that ability around our community to put monitoring stations in place that, they're starting to get into, lower than 100,000 a piece now, starting to get into the $10,000 to $20,000 a piece kind of range. That might really impact our ability to say and measure what's really happening in our communities.
John, thank you for the feedback. Please keep us in the loop. I know we had a call earlier this year with the NASA folks with you. And we have, I mentioned the NSF grant that we are looking into that we're participating in right now, which will hopefully come into fruition later next year. I know there's been several delays on the research side at UCF, but we continue to press forward there. So good. It's all good. The technologies are coming so quickly as far as air quality monitoring, not just externally, but internally, and indoor occupancy monitoring as well. So we're just keeping an eye out for that. Thank you, Rachel, for providing the link to take a look at that. Rachel, also, we discussed this at the focus group meeting. Duke Energy Solar program, the Clean Energy Connection Program.
I'm sorry, Jeff, it's hard to hear you. I think there's someone that needs to mute themselves. There's feedback, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Let me try to see who that is. All right, everyone's muted now. I was just saying to Rachel in the chat and Raquel, the Duke Energy Clean Energy Connection Program has the community solar program, particularly for low-income homeowners, and 10% of that community solar farm would be dedicated for them to drive down their utility bills over the course of 10 years. So that is actively in process. Right now they are doing subscribers from a local government and large business standpoint, statewide, and then they'll be opening it up to the community here shortly. It's similar to the FPL program, but much better in my opinion. The Duke Energy program has been really well framed. We just gotta hold them accountable, and hopefully they'll continuously do that program. And OUC has a variety of programs too for community solar that Sam Che, if you have any particular comments with regards to this, please jump in. But it's something that we did talk about at the focus group, and we'll continuously talk about it on Friday as far as county programs and what our role is, as we are not a utility, but we obviously can enable a variety of different programs.
Yeah, we've gone through a couple of iterations of community solar, and actually very, very proud that we have just went commercial with 2 large solar farms that are going to really increase our solar portfolio. A lot of that we can actually make a part of our current community solar program. Our program is different from Duke and FPL's. It's something that we're continually evaluating, and it could evolve in the future. But we are different from a utility perspective in that we don't actually own and operate these solar farms, just because of the current tax incentive environment that we can't monetize. And so, we do these through power purchase agreements, and that's the way that we can actually deliver the lowest cost solar to our customers. So, but just on the point on low income, it's something that we're evaluating as well, and seeing how in our current construct could we do something in that realm. But we're happy to say though that these new solar farms that we just brought online, it'll dramatically lower the community solar pricing that we have right now. So stay tuned for that. It's something that should be coming down the pike pretty soon.
Thank you, Sam. Sorry to put you on the spot. I guess I could have put Byron on the spot here too, but he's no longer at OUC, so thank you for that. Okay, so any other questions on the energy and climate action section? Again, more good discussion for Friday because there was a few things that we wanted to talk through on Friday from a community-wide strategy as well. Any other questions?
Jeff, not a question, but just a comment, kind of rounding up all of the presentations that we've had. I can't, but probably this particular one more than other. We're no doubt going through a paradigm shift with COVID, and it's affecting many of the areas that we've talked about. And I think that's partly why I know Mayor Demings wanted to proceed with this now, even though it's a challenging time for everyone. But I'm thinking that we should, before we wrap this up, have someone other than a committee member kind of look at it from a larger, higher up level and see if we're missing any opportunities, if there are any things that we should be considering, just because things are not going to be the same the next 5-10 years as they have been the last. And it's hard to kind of not take that into consideration on many of these items. So maybe that's a parking lot item for us to think about before we round up.
Yes, you say parking lot, but so it's something we talked about briefly in the committee meeting, but as part of this Google analysis that is going on right now, one of their key items that they're looking at to do is to frame this as part of economic development and job creation. So to your point, as far as shifting our economy and some of these items that we have opportunities and really low hanging fruit on creation of jobs and transitioning to, these different types of alternative energy. So absolutely great point. And we'll, continuously working through that for sure.
Jeff, if I may really quick, I'm hearing as we've gone through each one of these goals that have been identified in each one of these pillars, if you will, that the people focus is missing. And while I understand it's more of a sustainable operations plan, I think similar to having climate woven throughout all of it, there should be some maybe not necessarily goal, but a metric where that people is woven into it. So whether it's safety or solar for low income or all these issues that have been brought out, it should be woven into that plan. So the general public understands why all of these actions that the county is taking, why these actions help us, the people that we're serving in the first place. And I think some of those metrics would be eye-opening in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just want to support that and what Jennifer is saying, because the fact that we have so many low-income homes that are not functioning in Central Florida and that are a paycheck away from not being able to live in their rented homes, I think building in some deep infrastructure to support that. So, I mean, and some of the ideas that come off of the top of my head, but all these buildings that have these massive flat roofs that are just they're just hungry for solar farms, and I know this is a huge shift perhaps in thinking and infrastructure, and yet we could generate so much power that could help these low-income families, and we don't have to buy land. The land is up there just waiting for it. And so I know these are kind of like big ideas, and yet I think now's the time to build this in and alleviate some of these, the electric costs and I mean, just because the reality is we are paying for these families. I mean, we are now paying for their food, we're paying for their health care, we're paying for their social services. To Chris's point, or to oh my gosh, the woman that just shared, who I just love, who's over in Tampa. Tell me your name. We are paying for these people, whether we like it or not. And so if we could build structures in place that help people be self-sustaining and resilient on their own, I think it would be better.
Yep, and to Lila's point, really looking at this as a global level and at the regional level is really where the conversations would help drive this forward. So I put it in the chat, you just keep it coming. We'll talk through it more on Friday as far as how do we frame a goal. As you saw, there used to be 3 goals here. We moved one, so there's space for another one there. And would love to try to figure out a better way to frame that in a goal here.
Should there be an education goal here? Because I mean, you could start with your operations, but that could be transferred to the community later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I'm thinking of, just based on our discussion on Friday and then today's discussion, and we talked about, you know, having a system or a program, at least a campaign for energy efficiency in residential, because those are some things that the county controls themselves with a variety of different programs. And me taking on this position, I've been able to map out like all the different programs that touch each other, because whether it's housing, neighborhood services, utilities, I can keep going, community action, we all have different programs that serve different people. And one of the things that I mentioned on Friday's meeting was that was one of the things when I presented the SELF program to Mayor Demings was, hey, how do we align these programs so that we can have these programs available for everybody, not just income qualified or whatever, all these different intricacies of those programs. Because if you're not in it, it's really difficult to navigate those programs as a resident. So again, that's part of the strategy here. How to create a goal around that would really be a goal for the Friday meeting. Maybe we can just play around with some wording and how we can frame this out into, you know, all the county programs that we have that talk about residential home ownership and rental community and all these different funding programs. How do we kind of culminate that into something would be really nice here. All right, so.
Hey, Jeff, I just want to add one more thing. With SELF, you know, as a base, I assume everyone knows that. I happen to be on the board, so full disclosure, and been working and helping them for the last decade. So they're a community development finance institution, and they get a lot of capital. It's such a fantastic program because they bring enormous capital at a time where we have to rebuild and get contractors and other people back to work. It's a real economic development. And then more importantly, they provide financing for in LMI census tracts, like 72% of their loans are in LMI census tract. And so even the poor of the poorest, they put them up on the Kiva platform and help them get a new roof. It's a global micro lending platform, so they have a partnership there. So I would just encourage to look for additional grant opportunities. Right now, FDAX actually has a grant. I'm working with Pinellas County, and we figured we could actually fund improvements for about 45 homes in, you know, in what's called the Lealman CRA. So I think there are other ways to leverage and buy things down. They also have a program that they're doing with Martin to finance septic to sewer, where Martin's buying down those conversions. And then it's like an $8,000 loan. It's $83 a month over 10 years. I mean, it's just stuff like the financing is the secret sauce. Because what do utilities have over everyone is they build a power plant and stick it on your bill. But if you can finance those home improvements and you can finance solar, you know, you're now empowered, and we need to make that happen for everyone. So anyway, I just want to make sure everybody on the call knows about, you mentioned it, but I'm pretty sure everybody doesn't really know about it. And thank you, Jeff. You used to work with SELF, and for your leadership and bringing that to Mayor Demings, because I just think it's one of the few tools we have, that and the solar co-ops, to actually help people in the community.
I'll also say that as part of the SELF program launching and kind of this mindful shift in January, that was one of the first things that was on our deck to do. We, as a regional initiative with the City of Orlando and City of Winter Park, we'll be doing monthly check-ins with these resilient home campaigns or resilient home programs to enhance those. So we're tracking the progress and just to show progress there. But like I said, if we can develop this as a goal, it's something all good that we've been trying to get our hands on so that we can actually have some strategy to the various programs that are out there that we have already. And particularly on the FTAX, Susan, if you have somebody that likes to grant write, I reached out to Self regarding the FTAX grant. I know this is off topic here, but on topic. We would love to go for the FTAX grant, but the problem is just who's going to write the grant and how we get that done before September with everything that we have going on right now.
Yeah, it's happening now. Well, I'm working on it with Pinella, so let me talk to Annie Vanek from the Self staff and see if we can help you.
I reached out to Self about it, as well as several folks here internally. We just didn't have the bandwidth to write the grant.
I completely hear you. I hear you. But let's talk about it.
Yeah, that would be to enhance our Climate Seniors program, which is a low-income air conditioning replacement program that we currently have, which allocates about $200,000 a year for replacements. But again, that's only one small program for a very small amount of people. So again, it would enhance that program once we start layering all these different financing mechanisms.
Yeah. So I will share a link to Self in the chat because a couple of people asked, and then maybe just for all of us, we could create like a little email that you all could send out to your networks. When the loan officer, when Lori came online, I set up a meeting, a phone call with like Beverly Neal, who chairs NAACP in Orange County, and her housing chair. But this is something that every one of us on this committee should know about and just be sharing, because most people don't know this opportunity. They can loan people money anywhere in the state. They can create real impact if they have the support, like Orange County and the city of Orlando are giving to have a dedicated loan officer. But they can loan anywhere in the state, air conditioned, roof, and even home improvements like wheelchair ramps that aren't a carbon thing. So I'll send something in the chat and then create an email for all of you all to share in your networks and your churches and synagogues and so forth.
And unfortunately, from the county and city perspective, this got caught in a lot of COVID response issues that we were just having with the amount of getting the communication out there. But, we had several news releases up, and then everything just kind of all down. But the program is still in existence and will continuously.
Well, honestly, Jeff, they have doubled every month. They've doubled their loans from a year ago. So COVID, it's amazing because people are at home. So anyway, COVID has taken their work through the roof.
Yeah, I'll definitely follow up with everyone so that everyone saw what we were intending to launch out before everything kind of happened. So we will follow up on that. I did have the intent to do an activity with you all today, but given that we have 7 minutes of time left on the agenda, we had great discussion, but we're not going to be able to move forward on my little activity. I was hoping, and maybe we'll do this as a homework assignment, if I could spare maybe 15 minutes of y'all's time to take it home this weekend or next week as part of the homework assignment. I had created a send out with the email yesterday. I had created a very brief compilation of community efforts that were identified in the Our Home for Life program, the Mayor's Transition Team report, and some of the discussions that we had last week. And I've kind of distilled this into 5 different buckets that we haven't specifically addressed as part of the action plan that we're working on the internal operations side. So as a result, I've kind of created this little one sheet that I would love just some email feedback on, of saying, hey, we see that there is this opportunity to do this. We recommend you look at a STEM program for whatever. And just to take an example, the education component of the Our Home for Life program is something that is ongoing, but it has not been completed. or these are just items that are just kind of need some refreshment. So I would like to at least refresh based on our discussions here in these different 5 focus areas that we have not even talked about. So Madeline, to your point of education previously, and Lori said it, there's a whole strategy around education in the Our Home for Life program that just needs a little bit of a refresh. And by no means am I intending to refresh the entire Our Home for Life. I've just picked out these few different items that were somewhat related to what we have been discussing in our focus group. So I would love just a quick homework and feedback for everyone to provide some feedback and direction on this one sheet on whatever thoughts and ideas that they have that we could follow up on for the future. With that, in the respect of time, we're going to just move, Byron, I'm going to kick it over to you to just kick us off for this next week.
So Orange County will be hosting the second round of subcommittee meetings next week. 2 of the subcommittees held on Friday, and that's the Mobility and Fleet Subcommittee and the Energy and Climate Subcommittee, will meet to finish, review, and recommendations of the internal action plan. For the other 4 subcommittees, that's the Orange County staff has prepared an agenda to review the action item in the mayor's transition team report. That's the Our Home for Life plan and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. The subcommittees will also assist to connecting community-wide strategies with 19 socioeconomics indicators for a resilience index study that was performed recently by the county staff. The water use and quality, tree and land, supply chain and material management, and the building and infrastructure subcommittees will meet to discuss and update and recommendation priorities, the community strategies, and indicate key community shareholders for implementation. Thank you, and Leah, can you please review the schedule for next week?
Okay, so here are the scheduled times of the meetings. Oh,
there we go.
Okay, which have not changed from what you saw in our last meeting. The subcommittee meetings that Byron just went through are going to be held next week. And then the final at-large committee meeting will still be August the 28th, 9:30 to 11:30. That'll be our closeout meeting, essentially.
Yeah, and everyone at this time should have access to the WebEx that were sent out last week. I apologize once again for the confusions and complications with WebEx. Presentation analyst mode is very interesting, and I apologize. If any of you do not have those invitations for next week, please let me know. And again, everybody's welcome to attend any of the meetings, but we'd like at least for you to stay focused on the one meetings that you've been assigned to.
And in 2 minutes of closing, I'll take one, and Byron, you take the other. I just want to thank everyone. You can see how much hard work has gone into this and how passionate everyone is about this whole topic in our community. It's certainly a labor of love. So thank you all, and look forward to the meetings next week.
And the only thing I would like to say, I would just like to thank everybody for participating in the subcommittee meetings. I had the honor to attend every one of them. And I was very proud, and it was very energizing to see the amount of effort everyone was actually working with the county staff to actually achieve their goals of developing a plan what they can work to move the county in the direction which the mayor would like us to and also the community would like us to go also. Thank you all.
And thank you everybody for attending today. And also a thank you to all of our Orange County staff and internal sustainability and resilience team that has been a part of this effort since March. So we'll continue pressing forward and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend, and this completes the broadcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.